Howdy my totalies, always Tubular gamers. We're back with another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Got another fun ranking video for you, another Game Awards video. Today we're going to be looking at every racing game of the year. Yeah, we're going to be looking at all of the games that have won Racing Game of the Year at the Game Awards. You know, Geoff Keighley's show that's been going on for like 10 years. You know, the one that always manages to upset people. That awards show. They actually have had a racing/sports game category since its inception. And now you might be going, well, why didn't you say you were ranking all of the racing/sports games? Why does the title say just racing games? Well, after looking over it, it turns out only one non-racing or driving game has ever actually won this award. It's always been a racing game to win this award. So yeah, we're just going to call it racing games. So if you're unfamiliar with these types of videos, I look at all of the previous winners and rank them worst to best. I say worst to best, but there's really not a bad game here. Then I'll briefly share my thoughts on the game, see what the game was up against, compare and contrast, and then move on to the next one. I'll have some nice B-roll footage of the game that won, and I'll be ranking these games based off their quality, or at least how I perceive their quality. I did not choose any of the games on this list. These are, again, all the games that won. This was chosen by the Game Awards. And I'll even share my thoughts if I think that game should have won Racing Game of the Year, or if it should have been something else. You, of course, can let me know down below. I'd love to hear what everyone's favorite racing games are. I love racing games, and so this was a fun list to make. It was actually pretty difficult. These are all some of the best racing games of the last decade or so. And sadly, it's pretty clear that racing games aren't held in the same high regard that they used to be, but at least we have some really high quality games here. So with all that, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Got the Patreon and the super thanks. Let me know your favorites down below. Let's just get to the list. So in last place, we actually have this year, 2024. Obviously, as I'm recording this video, a winner has not been determined yet. We just have the nominees, so I will go over the nominees, pick which one I think will win, and then of course move on. There is a very good chance that a racing game does not win this year's best sports/racing game category, meaning it would be the second time that this has happened. And the reason I think this is going to happen is this was just an abysmal year for racing games. Seriously, this was like the worst year for racing games of the last decade. There was almost nothing. There was a few little indie racers like Victory Heat Rally, which were pretty good, but on the AA or AAA scale, yeah, it was just an absolute wasteland, and the nominees reflect that. There is only one racing game nominated for Racing/Sports Game of the Year, and it is F1 2024. Which is Codemasters' annual F1 series. There is a good chance that this does actually win, and then yes, a racing game would win Racing/Sports Game of the Year, but it is up against some other annual releases. Actually, after looking over the nominees, it's only annual releases. It's up against EA Sports FC 25, which is, you know, what replaced FIFA. It's up against NBA 2K25, the newest NBA basketball game. It's up against Topspin 2K25, which is that new tennis game by Hangar 13. And then it's up against WWE 2K24. Yeah, that's not exactly stiff competition. Which do I think is going to win this year's best sports/racing game? Yeah, I'm going to go with F1 24. I'd like to see a racing game win. This game actually seems to have some quality to it, and I can't really speak all that much on the other games here outside of WWE 2K24. This is a pretty decent wrestling game. But at the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, any of these games winning sports/best racing game of the year, I'd still have this at the very bottom. I think all of the games going forward are better than any of the nominees here. Seriously, 2024, it just sucked when it came to racing games. I think the biggest racing game release of 2024 was Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, and it wasn't very good at all. My favorite racing game all year has been Victory Heat Rally. That game, it's actually super fun, but it's not even nominated, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. Let's just move on. 2024, it was pretty upsetting for racing games. So here we have Forza Motorsport 7, which won Racing Game of the Year in 2017. Now, Forza Motorsport 7, I know it's not everybody's favorite Forza, but I still think it was a pretty decent racing game. The game had an amazing attention to detail and presentation, as do most of the Forza games. The racing, it is pretty nice. It is more on the sim side, obviously, but it doesn't go too nuts with it. It's actually quite customizable when it comes to the difficulty. The game had plenty of content. It did have a lot of cars, and while it did feel like there was a few steps back compared to prior Forza games, I still think the game was rather enjoyable. It had a pretty lengthy campaign, and there was a good amount of content at launch, and then of course there was plenty of DLC and add-ons and updates, etc, but I think it was still a good game. But then of course the real question comes in, if they thought this was the best racing game of the year, what the heck was it up against? Well, for sports/racing game, it was up against FIFA 18, Gran Turismo Sport, NBA 2K18, Pro Evolution Soccer 2018, and Project Cars 2. Now, FIFA 18, NBA 2K18, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2018, I really don't got anything to say. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. I don't play annual sports games. I just have absolutely no interest in them. I haven't pretty much my entire life, and that's not about to start now, so I don't have anything to really say about those. When it comes to Gran Turismo Sport, this is a good Gran Turismo game. I know that there are a lot of people that dislike it, and yeah, it does feel like a step backwards compared to several other Gran Turismo games, but I still think it was pretty decent. I'm not going to act like it's one of the best in the entire series, but there was fun to be had here. The soundtrack's pretty great. I use it all the time in my videos. The game looked nice, and there was a decent amount of content, but again, it wasn't the ace that Gran Turismo needed at the time. Project Cars 2, that actually is quite a good racing game. There's a lot of content, there's a good amount of cars. That would probably be my pick for sports/racing game of the year. I'd rather play Project Cars 2 than Forza Motorsport 7, but maybe that's a hot take. Either way, it's pretty evident that this was not a crazy good year for racing games. Like, I think these games are good, but nothing really past that. Still, I'd rather play any of these games than really any of the 2024 nominees, so that's something at least. So from one Forza game to the next, here we have Forza Motorsport, which won Best Sports/Racing Game of the Year in 2023. Now, when it comes to racing games in 2023, I think it was pretty decent. There were obviously some more smaller, more indie racing games that were pretty good, like Horizon Chase Turbo 2, but on the larger AAA scale, yeah, I think it was alright. And I think the latest Forza Motorsport is actually a good game. Yeah, it absolutely does have some issues as well, and like I mentioned for Forza Motorsport 7, it feels like it still has taken a few steps back compared to the older Forza games, but I think this was absolutely a step in the right direction. The presentation is just phenomenal in this game. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. The accessibility is incredible in this game as well. You got like blind people out here playing this game, blind people playing a racing game. I think that's pretty incredible. And then when it comes to the actual driving itself, I think it is well done. I like how customizable a lot of the aspects are with it. You can make this game like as hardcore of a sim as you want, or you can make it more arcadey. And I've always liked that. There's also a lot of content to this game. There's tons upon tons of events to do. Like, we're talking just tons of events. I think I put like 20 hours into this game before I was even like done with the campaign. There's pretty extensive multiplayer, and I generally had a good time with it. I won't lie though, there were plenty of things I disliked. I hated all the practice laps. I thought you just do way too many laps in this game in general. At times it kind of felt like it wasted my time. And getting the supercars, the cars you really want to drive, just seemed damn near impossible at times, but the game was still good. So what was it up against? It was up against EA Sports FC 24, F1 23, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged, and the Crew Motorfest. Now, EA Sports FC 24, yeah, I don't got anything to add there. F1 23 seemed like a solid F1 game, and what everyone's come to expect when it comes to that series. Then we have Hot Wheels Unleashed 2. I actually really enjoyed this game. This was easily my favorite racing game of last year. It was just a really fun arcade racer. It was an improvement on the previous game. They actually addressed some of the issues from the first game. It had a great sense of speed, really good selection of cars. This was a great game. I actually enjoyed this game more than Forza Motorsport, unironically. And then the Crew Motorfest, this was a good game as well. Part of it did feel a little bit like we have Forza Horizon at home, but nowhere near as bad as, say, the new Test Drive Unlimited. It was still cool. And I would actually say it's one of the more underrated titles by Ubisoft. I didn't see like anybody talking about it. Last year, it was an alright year for racing games. Again, I don't agree with their choice just because I actually think Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 is better, but at least Forza is a good game. So here we have Rocket League, which won Racing/Sports Game of the Year in 2015. Now, Rocket League is pretty well known at this point. It was an amazing concept for a game, and then the game just absolutely took off. Here we are like 10 years later, and people still remember Rocket League. They still fondly look back on Rocket League. It's still getting updates, DLCs, etc. Like, Rocket League is still pretty relevant even nowadays. But back in 2015, oh, it was the shit. People were playing the hell out of this game, and I had a lot of fun on Rocket League as well. It was very fun. There's never really been anything like it. Sure, it's not a racing game, but you're in cars at the very very least. It is more like a sports game, and the physics were actually really good. The cars felt great. There's a bunch of mechanics and maneuvers. Like, the game actually just has a ton of depth. There may have been some imitators afterwards, but nothing has ever come close to how popular Rocket League was. And when it comes to 2015, it was not even close that this was going to be the racing/sports game of the year, especially when you look at the competition. So Rocket League was up against FIFA 16, Forza Motorsport 6, NBA 2K16, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2016. Yeah, all of these are sports games except Forza Motorsport 6, which is a solid racing game, but I feel like it's not one of the strongest games in the Forza Motorsport series. 2015 in general was pretty light when it came to racing games. I am a little surprised Dirt Rally didn't get nominated. I actually think Dirt Rally is pretty good. And then if we want to get more indie or AA, there was Absolute Drift, which is pretty great, and Carmageddon Reincarnation actually came out in 2015. I love Carmageddon Reincarnation, but when it comes to racing or sports games, yeah, it's not even close. Rocket League was the right move here. So our next game is Gran Turismo 7, which won Racing/Sports Game of the Year in 2022. Now, Gran Turismo 7, I was actually pretty excited for. I was ready to see what a next-gen Gran Turismo would look like, and yeah, the game certainly looks amazing. I actually wasn't disappointed by Gran Turismo 7. I will say there was all of the issues with the microtransactions or sometimes macro transactions and just how unattainable some of these cars are, but over the years they've definitely addressed that issue a little bit, but it still is a bit ridiculous. But outside of that, I think Gran Turismo 7 is a pretty good game. When it comes to the actual racing, I really enjoyed Gran Turismo 7. Obviously, it is much more of a sim. You can kind of customize how arcadey you want it to be, but for the most part, it really feels like a sim through and through. And, you know, sometimes that is really great, and I think that this game, it's one of the best sims out there. The game has a great selection of cars. Even if you can't afford all of them, it has a really nice attention to detail. These tracks look amazing. The cars look amazing. It has actually a pretty fun single player. I know at times it feels like it can get a little repetitive and it goes on a little too long, but I actually did like all of the little requests you get. Getting the license was fun. The multiplayer was more than solid enough. The game unfortunately didn't have all that great of music, which was a bummer for me, but I still thought Gran Turismo 7, it was a pretty good racing game, and it's one of the best next gen or current gen or whatever you want to call it racing titles. And honestly, it wasn't a surprise to me at all that this game won Racing or Sports Game of the Year. I mean, what it was up against wasn't exactly stiff competition. So let's go over that. It was up against F1 22, FIFA 23, NBA 2K23, and then surprisingly Ollie Ollie World. Now, FIFA, NBA, yeah, I got nothing to add there. F1 22, another solid F1 game to my understanding. The interesting one is Ollie Ollie World. I've never talked about the Ollie Ollie games on my channel, and I gotta say, these are fun little skateboarding games. No, it's not as grand as Tony Hawk or Skate. They're nowhere near as good as those games, but these are just fun little indie skateboarding games. It's okay to have different types of skateboarding games, and I'd much rather play these than some of the lamer skateboarding games that have come out over the years that are sims, air quotes. Obviously, this is my runner-up to Gran Turismo 7 when it comes to best sports or racing game that came out in 2022, but 2022 did have some decent racing games. One that I think absolutely would have been nominated, but was not because of when it came out in the year, was Need for Speed Unbound. It came out like right when the Game Awards were happening, and so it just didn't make the cutoff, but that was like my favorite racing game from 2022. I know not everybody likes it, but I genuinely enjoyed Unbound. Grid Legends came out earlier that year. It came out the same day as Elden Ring, and I'm pretty sure it's just been forgotten permanently at this point. WRC Generations was there. Redout 2 is also pretty good, and I know some people actually like the Monster Energy Supercross games. All of these I'd much rather play than NBA 2K or FIFA. I'm going on a tangent here. 2022, it was an okay year for racing games. So our next game is Forza Horizon 3, which won Best Sports/Racing Game in 2016. Now, Forza Horizon 3, I very much enjoyed this. This was actually the first Forza Horizon game I tried. I really liked the location, the cars felt really nice, and I think it was a somewhat sizable improvement on Forza Horizon 2. I've put a decent amount of time into Horizon 3, and it's been nothing but a blast. This was really when they were totally just locking in what Horizon's identity was going to be, where they just start giving you tons and tons of cars. In the location, Australia, it was really cool. There was a bunch of different biomes, and I know a lot of people actually prefer Horizon 3 versus some of the later Horizon games. and the game would go on to be updated for several years to come. I don't think most people are going to deny Horizon 3's quality, and it remains one of the fan favorites in all of the Forza series. But what was it up against in 2016? Well, it wasn't up against a single other racing game. Yeah, it was up against FIFA 17, MLB The Show 16, NBA 2K17, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2017. I don't have anything to comment on any of those games. I've never tried any of them. I have no interest in those sports games. I guess there wasn't any good racing games for it to go up again. Or, you know, they just didn't even nominate what was actually the best racing game of 2016. I'll be real, 2016 was a pretty weak year for racing games. There was almost nothing. It was low-key wasteland out here, but there was one racing game that stood above all in my opinion, and that is Trackmania Turbo. Trackmania Turbo came out in 2016. It's one of my favorite racing games ever. I love this game to death. It's like my favorite of the Trackmania series. The fact that it wasn't even nominated is pretty lame. Like, that game just had fantastic vehicles, it had excellent levels, the feel was just amazing in that game. There's very little to dislike with Trackmania Turbo. I know that the community didn't take to it the same way as they did with several other Trackmania games, but that remains like my favorite game in the whole series. Horizon 3 is cool and all, but it's not Trackmania Turbo. So again, from one Forza to another, we have Forza Horizon 4, which won Racing / Sports Game of the Year in 2018. Now, Forza Horizon 4, it's pretty similar to Forza Horizon 3. If you like the Horizon games, really Forza in general, I think you're going to like this game. The location is different with it being in the UK, but the gameplay remains pretty much the same as the prior game, where they just want to give you a ton of cars, like really quickly. Like, they just give you so many cars, it's pretty incredible, and then you just do a bunch of fun races and events. There's a bunch of event types, and Forza Horizon 4 really never gets old. There are so many different types of missions, and the game just focuses on being fun instead of it being just race after race after race. There's actually a lot of variety here. The variety is really great in Forza Horizon 5. It's not the best in my opinion of the Horizon games, but this is when the games really started to get just balls to the wall. I mean, they kind of did in Horizon 3 as well, but I really did like Horizon 4. I thought it was actually a really fun game and one of the best Horizon games in general. Now, what was Horizon 4 up against? Was it up against anything exciting? It was up against FIFA 19, NBA 2K19, Pro Evolution Soccer 2019, and then Mario Tennis Aces. So yeah, there's no racing games again. And that's likely because 2018, it just wasn't a great year when it came to racing games. After looking up what racing games even released in 2018, there was only two that even stood out to me, and that was The Crew 2 and MX vs ATV All Out. I know a lot of people don't even like MX vs ATV All Out, but I thought it was okay. And then there was The Pooh 2. Look, The Crew 2 is a fine racing game. It's not as good as the latest one, but I wouldn't say it was like amazing or engaging or engrossing or anything like that. I really didn't care much about The Pooh 2. But to take a step back and talk about the games that Forza Horizon 4 was actually up against, yeah, I don't got anything to say about the annual sports titles, but I will comment on Mario Tennis Aces. That was actually a pretty good game, maybe the best in the Mario Tennis series. Like, that's probably the best Mario sports game on the Switch. But even then, it's not Forza Horizon 4. I totally agree with their choice here, and I think it is the best game of this list. And I think that anybody who likes modern racing games should check out Forza Horizon 4. It's a fun time. So I'm sure some people are going to be scratching their head at this one, but I have Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which won Best Sports / Racing Game in 2019. I know what you're probably thinking, seriously, you'd rather play CTR Nitro Fueled over either of those Forza Horizon games or Gran Turismo or even the new Forza Motorsport? Yeah, I actually would. I really enjoyed Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. This is one of my favorite kart racers, one of my favorite racing games of all time. It's fantastic. The presentation was great. It was an amazing recreation of the original CTR, and then they just added so much content, not just with the updates, but initially as well. There was so much to this game, so many tracks, characters, the gameplay actually has a good amount of depth. The drifting just feels amazing. This game has a great sense of speed. The skill ceiling is really high. Like, what's there not to love about CTR Nitro Fueled? Probably all the microtransactions, that is some bullshit. And Activision low-key just self-sabotaging the entire game. But if you can look past that, you'll have one of the very, and I mean very best kart racers ever. Like, no hyperbole, the game is just amazing. I love this game to death. So what was it up against? It was up against Dirt Rally 2.0, eFootball, Pro Evolution Soccer 2020, F1 2019, and FIFA 20. So yeah, not the most exciting picks, a few sports games in there which I have nothing to comment on, but Dirt Rally 2.0, that's actually a good one. Dirt Rally 2 is one of the best rally games ever made. It's a really serious sim, but I found it incredibly enjoyable. 2019 actually was a good year for racing games. There was plenty of other games that weren't nominated here. It's not really a racing game, but falls under the sports category. Trials Rising came out. There was Team Sonic Racing, which, yeah, it's nowhere near as good as CTR Nitro Field, but it was alright. Need for Speed Heat came out, which is one of the best Need for Speed games. Like, I don't know how Heat was not nominated. Grid also came out in 2019, which was also pretty decent. And then there was even Dangerous Driving, which is more on the like AA side, but that game was actually alright. Out of all the racing games I've mentioned though, Crash Team Racing Nitro Field is easily the best one. 2019 was actually a good year for racing games. One of the few good ones, it feels like. So here we have, at least at this moment, the only non-racing / driving game that has ever won the best sports / racing game category, and that is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2, which won best sports / racing game in 2020. And you know what? If there was a game that was going to do it, it would be Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2. This game is just amazing. I've been a long time Tony Hawk fan. I love the old Pro Skaters, and this really was just a return to form, and it's arguably the best Tony Hawk game of them all. And that really is saying something, trust me. The game feels amazing. They nailed the physics, they nailed the atmosphere, they nailed all the important parts. Plenty of Tony Hawk games have fucked up when it comes to the skateboarding physics, the levels, the characters, you name it, not this game. I think they did an amazing job when it came to recreating the older Pro Skater games. Like, these really are the levels I remember, and there's a bunch of fun objectives. The game just feels so amazing to play. It really is just a ton of fun. This is as fun as it gets from a video game. Like, I have a really hard time imagining someone playing 1+2 and going, yeah, this sucks, I don't like it. Like, it's just a joy to play through and through. Even if you don't like skateboarding at all, I think you're going to enjoy the game. It wasn't even close for me personally that this was the best sports / racing game of 2020. Like, 2020, plenty of bad shit happened, but there were some amazing games, and this was one of them. But what was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2 up against? It was up against Dirt 5, F1 2020, FIFA 21, and NBA 2K21. Alright, we got the usual suspects in here, an NBA game, a FIFA game, even an F1 game. But Dirt 5? Yeah, I think it was actually good. I know a lot of people didn't care for it, and it was a little on the shorter side, but I thought it was a decent arcade rally racer. It definitely doesn't take itself anywhere near as seriously as the Dirt Rally games do, but it still was an enjoyable game. It was a fun time. When it comes to racing games in 2020, it was pretty middling to bad. Like I mentioned, there was Dirt 5 and F1 2020. There was Hot Shot Racing, that's a bit more indie, and that was a good time. There was Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which was, yeah, it was just kind of more of a gimmick. And then there was Project Cars 3, which was, yeah, that one wasn't great either. Oh, there was Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2. Yeah, that one wasn't anything all that special either. Okay, yeah, 2020, it wasn't a great year for racing games either. I feel like I've said that more times than that it was a good year, but 2020 really wasn't an amazing year for driving games in general. Still, when it came to sports / driving games, it was a bit better since we had Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2. Game is excellent. So here we got another, you'll never guess it, another Forza game. Yeah, half of this list has been Forza games, but what can I say? Forza games have won more than anything else. So here we have Forza Horizon 5, which won Best Sports / Racing Game in 2021. Now, Forza Horizon 5, ooh, this really is one of my favorite racing games of all time. They took all the great stuff from the previous Horizon games and just turned it up to 11. I love the setting in this game. There's so many different biomes. All the environments look super different, and they all look amazing. Seriously, the presentation is fantastic, not just with the vehicles, but the environments as well. And then the actual racing, it's amazing. I love how this game feels. Yeah, it does feel more on the arcade side, but it's not like super arcade. It's more simcade, and it's one of the few times I feel like where it's actually done incredibly well. The game has an amazing roster when it comes to vehicles. Like, there's so many cars to drive, and the game is constantly rewarding you with cars. Like, they give you cars. There's different types of cars, and they just give you so many. Like, I loved how many different cars I was getting. It was like every hour I was driving something totally different, and it was so much fun. There's a ton of events. They're all very different. The game has a lot of variety, and it was just a really enjoyable campaign. And then there's some really awesome multiplayer. There's been some great DLC over the years, like Forza Horizon 5. It's one of the best racing games ever. So as always, we wonder, what was it up against? Well, it was up against some good games, actually. It was up against F1 2021, it was up against FIFA 22, it was up against Hot Wheels Unleashed and Riders Republic. Obviously, FIFA 22, don't got anything to say there. F1 2021 seems like a solid F1 game. Hot Wheels Unleashed, I actually really enjoy Hot Wheels Unleashed. This was like the best Hot Wheels game ever at the time, and it still is one of the best. That was a really good arcade racer. Yeah, there were some annoying microtransactions, but I think the actual tracks were great. There was an amazing roster of vehicles. Like, Hot Wheels Unleashed was a fun time. There was a good amount of content to it as well. Riders Republic, that game is actually a bit underrated. I like it. There's plenty of racing in it. There's different types of transportation, and sure, it's not the most conventional or traditional, and they kind of just drop you into this big open area and it feels more like a live service at times, but I actually had a lot of fun with Riders Republic, more so than I think most people would expect. I certainly liked it way more than Steep, which was their prior game. Like, that game was just whatever. Riders Republic, nice mix of arcade and sim, and it's all about just having fun. It's just a good time, and I could really say the same thing about Forza Horizon 5, but when it comes to all of those games, it's not even close. Forza Horizon 5 is easily the best game there. When it came to racing games in 2021, it was just kind of whatever. The Game Awards actually kind of hit all the major points, you know, Forza Horizon 5, F1, Hot Wheels Unleashed, and Riders Republic. Outside of that, I mean, there was a few other smaller racing games. There was a Destruction All-Stars, which definitely isn't getting nominated for anything, but it was a pretty whatever year. At least we got Horizon 5, which it really is fantastic. If you haven't tried it yet, like, it's one of the best racing games ever, no hyperbole. But here we have it, the top game, and it's Mario Kart 8, which won Best Sports/Racing Game in 2014. The very first game to ever win this award, and yeah, I guess it's really just never gotten any better since. Mario Kart 8 is a legendary video game at this point. Not only is it one of the greatest selling games of all time, but it really is one of the best racing games ever. While I know plenty of people are sick of it at this point, you'd really be hard-pressed to find a better racing game in the last 10 years. It just doesn't really get much better than Mario Kart 8, and this was just the Wii U game that won. When it came to the Switch, oh, it just got better and better. Now there's even more courses and characters for it. Like, the game is just kind of goated. It has easily the best handling of any Mario Kart game. It has the best track selection of any Mario Kart game. It has like the best character roster. It doesn't have the best battle mode, but it has the best racing overall, and yeah, it really isn't a surprise that Mario Kart 8 is at the top of my list, or that it won Best Sports/Racing Game. It was up against some good games. It was up against FIFA 15, Forza Horizon 2, NBA 2K15, and Trials Fusion. Got nothing to say about NBA and FIFA. All these years, every single year, they make the nominees and they never win. Never. And so I hope they keep the streak going and they don't win in 2024. But anyway, outside of those two, we got Forza Horizon 2. I've talked enough about Forza in this video. At this point, I'm going to just do a Forza ranking. And then Trials Fusion, I'm glad to see that this game was nominated. Trials Fusion is actually pretty good. That's a fun little game. It is obviously very different from all the other games I've talked about today, but I enjoyed that one. But none of them got shit on Mario Kart 8. They chose the right game here. Mario Kart 8 was maybe the best game of 2014. It was really that good. Like, 2014 was a pretty decent year for racing games. There was The Crew, Drive Club, okay, maybe not Drive Club. There was Grid Autosport, Assetto Corsa. Yeah, there was actually some good racing games in 2014, but Mario Kart 8's the best one of them all, not even close. And the moment I saw that it won Racing Game of the Year, I was like, yeah, that's probably going to be the top game, and here we are, and it is the top game. So that's really it for this video. After looking over the last 10 years of racing games, I gotta say, it's gotten pretty sad. Like, I know people say, oh, racing games are kind of dead, and I always go, no, they're not. Here's ABC, but if you look at every individual year, yeah, good racing games are spread pretty thin in the last 10 years. In the 2000s, early 2010s and the 90s, man, we got so many amazing racing games. it feels like we rarely get any really good ones, especially in the AA or AAA scene, and that's a real shame. I love racing games. At the very least, I got to talk about a bunch of awesome racing games and one sports game, air quotes on sports, being Pro Skater. I love the Pro Skater games. Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. If you made it to this part of the video, let me know your favorite racing game in the last 10 years, and you can comment Rambler, because that's all I'm doing at this point. We're just rambling and going on and on and on. I need to just end this video. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, y'all. Bye-bye.